How artificial intelligence is improving ERP systems, when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation, and Infor versus SAP. Those are just a few of the topics that we're going to cover today in episode number 126 of Transformation Ground Control.
This is Transformation Ground Control, your source for all things business, technology, strategy, and change. If you're growing your business, leading change within your organization, or undertaking any sort of operational or technology change initiative, this podcast is for you. This show covers what you need to know about digital transformation, organizational change, operational improvement, and business growth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. This is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation, including the people, process, technology, and strategy aspects of transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling, your host here today, along with Kyler Cheatham. Kyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. You're with Third Stage Consulting as well, and we are an independent digital transformation consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. Thank you for being here today. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. So be sure to check us out on Amazon, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. So great show for you in store today. First of all, we're going to get to some questions from the audience in our opening segment, as well as some hot topics. In those hot topics, we're going to cover the sweet spot of change. We're going to talk about how artificial intelligence is improving Microsoft Dynamics 365. And we're also going to talk about the top ERP podcast, according to Solutions Review. So we'll cover those hot topics in the opening segment. And then later in the show, we'll have our first guest, who is Judith O'Callaghan, who's going to be on the show talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. So we're going to chat with Judith, who is a digital transformation leader, but she's also an author, and she writes a lot about ancient wisdom in quotes from ancient times and ties it back to leadership, business transformation, and digital transformation. So that should be a great conversation. And then last but not least, later in the show, we are going to play and analyze a video clip from our YouTube channel about, it's actually a comparison of Infor versus SAP. And it's a video that Kyler and I created that we'll play for you and chat with you about later in the show. But before we get to those later segments, let's get to some of these questions that the audience has for us, Kyler.
Absolutely. Well, we've got some fresh questions in our question jar. If you do follow Eric or Third Stage on any of our social media accounts, you can pop your question in the comments wherever you're watching. You can also pop them in now, and we pull them and ask Eric them live. He's never seen them before, so we like to put him on the spot here. So this is a great question from your YouTube channel. It says, Eric, I'm curious on your take on digital transformation with generative AI coming into the mix. What other factors may come into play or evolve with this incorporated AI and associated governance as part of their digital transformation journey? Meaty question there.
That is meaty. And in fact, I just recorded a YouTube video about this topic. So the video will probably be released in the next 2 weeks, I imagine. But what I'd say is that artificial intelligence has done a lot of good things for ERP. Some of it is fundamental type stuff that you could argue we should have been doing all along. For example, one of the things I talk about in the video is how data management now is even more important than ever, because you have to have good data in order for AI and AI models and generative AI to work. And you also have to really understand all your different sources of data too. So that's one positive impact that AI has had on ERP software. But I think perhaps even more material than that is going to be the effectiveness and efficiency gains that AI has on the usage of ERP systems. So if you compare AI as one extreme to an older extreme of ERP systems where you used to have like the green screen 4-digit transaction codes where it wasn't even menu driven. You had to memorize these transaction codes. Like GT56 or whatever would be a certain transaction, and whoever in the organization did GT56, that whatever that transaction is, had that memorized. They knew what code to enter, and that's how they sort of conducted their processes. But now with generative AI, you can just ask the computer, please run this report, or please tell me how much inventory we have on hand of this one particular part. You don't necessarily need to even memorize, certainly not a transaction code and not even a menu path. Now it's more, you just type in the interface. In some cases, you're able to just ask the system the questions that you want answered. So that I think is probably one of the biggest gains, is just the fact that now you have more accessibility, and you can more accessibility to information, and you can also interact with the system in a way that we've just never seen before. So those are some of the biggest changes that we're seeing.
Absolutely. Well, looking forward to that video, and definitely stay tuned for our hot topics for more on that, specifically with Microsoft Dynamics as well. So let's get another one here. This one is actually from TikTok, and just for some context, it's for your secret to effective demos, software demos video. And this comment says, we see proof of concept, but it doesn't bring any value to our overall demo. What's your feedback on that?
Well, I'm not sure how exactly this particular person is using proof of concept, but we have seen it be successful with our clients. And we generally don't refer to it as proof of concept, though. We generally refer to it as more of day in the life. So in other words, instead of just showing us a sales pitch, show us what it looks like in the day in the life of running our business using your software. And that forces you to really focus on the specific transactions and business processes that are unique to you as a business, and that you do day to day to run your business, and you're getting to evaluate the system through that lens. Proof of concept is generally referred to situations where you're already leaning towards a certain system. You've already been through demos, but now you want to go deeper and have the software vendor or the implementer build out specific functionality for you. And oftentimes that's a paid engagement, but it's sort of a pilot. You're paying the vendor to build out their software in a way that could fit your business. You try it out, see if it works. And if it does, then you presumably, move forward with a bigger transformation or a bigger implementation of that software. So I'm not sure what the context of the question is, but that's generally the difference that we see between sort of day in the life, which we'd use as part of the demo process, versus proof of concept, which is usually post demo. And it's usually post demo, but there's still some lingering doubt, or there's still some proof that needs to be seen within the organization that the software works.
It sounds like the importance distinction there is on the business side of making sure your demo scripts are effectively achieving all of the milestones you need to see as a business, as opposed to letting the vendor drive that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the key. That's the key, is just making sure it's not a sales pitch, and that it's actually getting down to brass tacks as far as your specific functions and operations.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear from the audience too, because software demos can be a huge challenge or pain point for a lot of the clients that come to us to ensure that they're meeting their technical and business objectives. What is kind of the number one tactic you'd utilize, or your experience when it comes to software demos? What's something that definitely people shouldn't miss when it comes to those very important strategic decisions?
Yeah.
So pop that in the comments, and we'll kind of come back to that. But we have some exciting hot topics that I really want to get to today. So I know, Eric, we'll kind of cover that after we take a quick break.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to, after we take that break, we're going to get into a few hot topics. One is going to be the sweet spot of change. We're also going to talk about, speaking of AI, we're going to talk about how AI is improving D365, or can improve Microsoft D365, and by extension, also improve, I suppose, other ERP systems as well. And then we're also going to talk about the top ERP podcasts, according to Solutions Review. Spoiler alert, we might be on that list. I'm not sure. We'll find out. And then later in the show, we're going to have Judith O'Callaghan on, who's going to talk about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. And then last but not least, later in the show, Kyler and I will talk about Infor versus SAP. So be sure to stick around. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday, streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also available on Google Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Apple Podcast, all the podcast platforms out there. You can find us there, so be sure to check us out, subscribe, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. This is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation, including the people, process, and technology sides of transformation. So you've got a few hot topics for us here today. Tyler, what have you got in mind?
Yeah, well, first let's touch on this concept of the sweet spot of change. And mostly this is a study from Harvard Business Review that focuses on mid-sized companies. And I wanted to get your feedback on this concept here. So it's more of a mindset. Unlike small companies with limited resources, mid-sized companies are looking for that sweet spot to rethink how they relate change to uncertainty. So moving from the "this is how we do it" mindset to what could be. And they talk about they unlock the hidden superpowers of creating those new pathways through internal communication and scenario mapping specifically. So thinking of the how it is today or what it could be. And I wanted to get your feedback if you've ever done any kind of this scenario mapping to really push one of our mid-sized clients or even our larger size clients to understand the concept of innovation or what could be through mapping out different scenarios.
Yeah, we do. And it's a lot of times it's maybe a little bit less clean slate mapping of scenarios. And in other words, rather than just sort of starting with a blank sheet of paper and saying, let's talk about what your processes could look like. Typically, what we find to be the most effective is to start with what you're doing today, what's working and what's not working, or what could be working better. And then the third layer would be, if we were to just totally transform and disrupt things, what else could we be doing that we haven't really thought of yet? So it's sort of like three layers. You've got the stuff you're doing well, the secret sauce you want to preserve. You've got the stuff that's inefficient or broken. It's sort of that low hanging fruit, the stuff you need to fix to be more efficient and scalable. And then the third one is the more innovation driven stuff that's more like, this is really thinking outside the box. This is really pushing the boundaries of who we are as an organization. And depending on your risk profile as an organization, you're going to have a different mix of those three buckets of stuff. But I think the key is just to recognize and not get too carried away necessarily with that third bucket, which is what you're talking about, what the study talks about, because you don't want to overdo it or overshoot, where the magnitude of change that you're willing or capable of going through as an organization.
Yeah, it's interesting. This study called it the flux capacity. So finding the area in which you really don't push that boundary into moving into so much transformational change that you don't achieve the business objectives or you disrupt the overall status quo. So it's interesting that you say that because that's kind of what that sweet spot concept really means.
Right. And I didn't even read the article. So there you go.
You could have written it. Well, let's move into an exciting development here in the ERP world specifically. So Microsoft has utilized AI to improve its Dynamics 365 system. And I wanted to kind of get more of a functional piece of feedback to say, is this really valuable when it comes to looking at an ERP system? So it's called Copilot, and I'm sure you've probably heard of it, but basically it's an AI-powered assistant for their CRM and ERP systems. And just to give an example of what Copilot can do, it can create new project plans. It can also draft project status reports in seconds rather than 2 to 3 hours. It can create a task and structure a proposal. You can edit it or accept it, which we see a lot of things like ChatGPT and OpenAI. You can edit and kind of tweak it towards your messaging or overall goals. And then it can actually take data in the system and put analytics into reporting. So it enhances the ability to kind of get data and project statuses out of the system, as opposed to having to have a PM, draft all of those, or having some sort of human resource to actually access all of that information. So it's kind of similar to what you were answering the question about generative AI in the first hot topic scenario. So interested to hear your feedback, or if you've had any exposure to Copilot within kind of your client work or anything like that.
So I have not yet used Copilot myself. I've used other forms of generative AI like ChatGPT, of course, but not Copilot yet. Although I will say that as a consultant, a career consultant that remembers the days and weeks and months spent just in front of a computer creating pretty PowerPoint decks, I'm super excited to see what Copilot can do, because I think there's a lot of wasted time and value in the consulting world. I think first of all, it's grunt work, so it's not super fun for an entry level consultant necessarily. For some, I suppose it is fun, so don't take offense, please, if you are a young consultant that enjoys this stuff. But I did not enjoy being a PowerPoint jockey and just creating pretty pictures. Wasn't something that was fun for me, and I definitely don't think clients like paying for that. So I think Copilot has an opportunity to really streamline and focus the value of what consultants can do. And it's not just consultants, by the way. I think I'm just speaking from my own experience. I think organizations and users of Microsoft Office products, as well as Microsoft ERP and CRM, I think it's a great product to sort of tie it all together. And Microsoft's really proving too that they are sort of an impressive leader in this whole AI space, which is really fascinating to me, because they're such a well-established, big, mature company that usually those companies are the least likely to be the more innovative ones that are sort of embracing these new technologies. But such is the case with Microsoft. So I think it's really cool. I can't wait to use it, to be honest. I think it'll be a super cool addition to the Microsoft suite of products.
And what are some important considerations when you are looking at D365 specifically for ERP or CRM to consider when looking at the addition, I should say, of something like Copilot or generative AI in the selection process?
Well, I think it's like any sort of emerging technology or any sort of really cool bell and whistle that you might find from software, which is that it's great to see, it's great to know it exists, but the real question becomes, how are you going to use it, or will you use that within your organization? Is it realistic to use? If it's just a feature that it's cool, it's got some novelty to it, then it's probably not worth investing a ton of time, money in it. But if it's something that can totally transform your business and you actually have a clear vision for how it's going to be baked into your business processes going forward, then and only then should you be investing in those technologies. And I'm not saying this is the case for AI or any specific technology, but just in general, if you're looking at some sort of emerging technology or advanced technology, it's okay to say no to it, or to say, you know what, we're not really ready for that yet. Let's get some of the more basic fundamental stuff in place. Then, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, or whatever of the transformation, we might get to that other stuff. That's okay too. Even though software vendors don't want to tell you that because they want you to buy more software, it is important to recognize that you can sort of pace yourself and get some quick wins first, and then move on to those more advanced technologies later. So just really depends on where you are in the maturity spectrum and your risk tolerance and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And turning to the audience, I'd be curious to hear from anyone in the comments here that has used Copilot and your experience around it. So if you can, just drop that wherever you're viewing, and we'll be able to get some good conversation going. But definitely an exciting new innovation within the industry.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, speaking of the ERP industry, a congratulations is in place to you, Eric, and it's from Solutions Review and the top ERP podcast you should be listening to. So the number one featured on here is actually our Digital Stratosphere podcast, which has over 100 episodes and counting. And these are really bite-sized episodes. So our shorter form podcast. And if you haven't subscribed to that, you can find it anywhere you get your podcast. And then Ground Control is number 3 on the list here as well. So big congratulations to getting on that list. And just to clarify, we don't pay for any of those placements. That's completely organic of listening. So congratulations to you, and congratulations to our audience for making this such a popular podcast. And I'm curious, why do you think that this podcast has been so successful in the conversation overall in the industry? Eric, why did you feel like you wanted to start that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll also say congratulations to you too, because you're in both podcasts as well. So, and I would love to say it's because you and I are such awesome podcast hosts. That's really, it's as simple as that. That's why we are number 1 and number 3, respectively, on the podcast. But I don't know. I think it's because I think it's a lot like our YouTube channels and our other social media outlets. I think it's probably the same reasons why people like that stuff, is because we don't hold back. I think we discuss on this show and on Digital Stratosphere, the other podcast, our sister podcast, we discuss the things that people are thinking but are afraid to say out loud or can't say out loud because they work for a vendor, or that's just not the way the industry works, that sort of thing. And because we're independent, tech agnostic, I think we have the luxury of not being tethered to having to toe the company line, or having to stay aligned with certain marketing messages, or staying on brand or on point, or whatever you want to call it. We can just talk about what it takes to succeed in digital transformation and help the community figure that out, regardless of whether or not it's what people want us to say or what they want to hear or whatever. So I think that I don't want to call it the truth, but that the fact that we just state that we're honest about the good, the bad, I think that's what people really want and are looking for in the industry.
Absolutely. Well, that is a huge accomplishment. So thank you to all of you out there that helped us make this popular and really bring that transparency into the industry conversation. So deeply appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you to the audience for getting us that attention. And all we need to do now is just move this one, Transformation Ground Control, up to number 2. So we've got the number 1 and 2 spot. We'll settle for 1 right now for the time. Good. Well, thank you for that update on the hot topics, and we're excited for our first guest, Judith O'Callaghan, who's going to be on the show talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. It may sound like an unconventional topic, because it is, partly, but it's actually an idea that was triggered by my connection to Judith on LinkedIn. Judith is someone that I've known for a long time. We've worked together. It's one common client in particular in Australia. So our Australia office is how I got to know her, was from our footprint there in Australia in the Asia Pacific region. And since we've connected a couple years ago, she has started writing about ancient wisdom and quotes from ancient wisdom, and how it ties to leadership and change and transformation and all that stuff, business type stuff. So it's super interesting stuff that she posts. So I thought it'd be cool to have her on the show to talk about that and maybe unpack some of her quotes and bring some of this to life in a discussion here in the show. So we're going to have Judith on the show here in just a moment. And then later in the show, we're also going to play you a clip that you and I did, Kyler, on our YouTube channel, which is a comparison of Infor versus SAP. So we'll play you that clip and discuss that as well. So stick around. We'll be right back. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday, streaming to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as on audio podcast platforms such as Amazon, Apple, Google, and other podcast platforms. So be sure to check us out wherever you listen or watch the podcast. So I'm excited for our next guest, Judith O'Callaghan, who is a digital transformation leader and consultant that's worked on a number of different high-profile engagements throughout the world. She's based out of Australia, and as I mentioned before the break, she's someone I got to know at a mutual client in Australia. For one of Third Stage's clients in Australia was where I first got to know her, and have since stayed connected and followed some of her thought leadership. And much of her thought leadership focuses on ancient wisdom and how ancient wisdom and quotes from the olden days, if you will, how those quotes are still relevant today in terms of leadership, digital transformation, change, all that stuff that we go through as leaders within business organizations. So with that all being said, Judith, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Eric, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, glad to have you
meet
here.
Everyone virtually.
Yeah, a lot of familiar faces on the chat here today, but a lot of new faces as well. And I have to give you particular thanks because I have the benefit of being in London. So in London right now, it's only 3 p.m. You are in Australia, however, and it is not a reasonable time for you right now. It's after midnight. Is that correct?
It's close to midnight, so it's good.
Close to midnight. So thank you for being here late hours your time. Excited to have you on the show. You and I have worked together in the past, and just to set some context here, the reason I wanted to have you on the show, in addition to you being so knowledgeable about digital transformation, business transformation in general, that's how you and I met. I've also noticed in recent months and maybe even years on LinkedIn, I felt we're connected there, and you post a lot about ancient wisdom, and you tie ancient wisdom and quotes back to sort of leadership, business transformation, change, digital transformation, that sort of thing. So I guess before I jump in and talk about some of the thought leadership you put out there, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your background and how you grew up in the space and all that good stuff.
All right, and thank you. Thank you again, Eric, for this opportunity. So a little bit about me. I grew up in a small place in South India. So it's kind of a melting pot of cultures. And the place has been a place of trading for a very long period of time, like one of the ancient towns where many cultures came in and left their footprint. So as a result of it, I grew up with a lot of wisdoms and sayings from the past, and I've seen a lot of trading families apply that in real life. And like every kid, you take that experience for granted. So when I got into business transformations, I was asking questions myself on where do I get the source of inspiration from? So naturally, you go back to the roots. And with business transformation problems or things that we are trying to find solutions for, I started looking into myself and then the sayings and everything, wisdom that's available around us. So that's where I got into it. And I started writing about it, and I realized it is very powerful and the information needs to get around. So I started sharing it in the platforms that I know. So I've been finding it very useful and cathartic. And also, whenever there is a opportunity where ancient wisdom can help, it is always there. So
yeah,
that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating too, because with what you do, it's a good reminder that while some things change a lot, technology and just the world in general is changing so rapidly. When these quotes that you talk about on LinkedIn and in your social media accounts, it's also a reminder that some things don't change, and there's some sort of universal truths and things that can guide us, as we're going through massive amounts of change and whirlwind amounts of transformations and things like that. So I find that super fascinating.
That's very true, right? So when I look at someone gave me a different perspective on humanity as we talked about ancient wisdom. So the perspective is change has always been there. And yes, we are experiencing a lot of change in the last 10, 20 years, but change as such has been there. And humans, we have evolved over time with technology adapted. Countries came in and technology came in. It's just the type of change that varies. So, but we as human race are very powerful in adapting to that. So some of the lessons are very useful, and we all apply it,
Right.
knowingly or unknowingly. Yeah.
Right. So before we jump into some of these quotes and sort of unpack this concept a little bit more, maybe tell us a little bit about your background in the digital transformation, business transformation space. To maybe just tell us about you and your professional side of you.
All right. So, from a work perspective, after graduation, I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to work in business transformation. One of the very first transformations I got involved was for a sugar company based of nowhere. So, the objective was very simple. How do we help that sugar company, which is literally based in a very tricky town, to be able to sell their product? So that's what got me thinking, and had the privilege of working with all the senior leaders of that organization, and their passion drove me. And I was a young trainee, put in the job. So, and as always, you learn from the environment around you. So I learned it, and the passion of the leaders drove me. And then I got involved in other transformations. I worked, my career took me to the US, to Europe, and now I'm here in Australia. So everywhere else, I'm experiencing very similar things. People with great passion make things happen. And that's very true in our world, especially in the world of digital business transformations. Over the last few years, I've run SAP transformations for a living, and I love it. I love what I do, and I love to see the outcomes that we achieve. And together, we are making a better place. That's what drives me, and that's what keeps me going. So, in whatever shape or form, we are all making the world a better place.
Right. Yeah, and that's what's cool about what you and I both do is that
Yeah, absolutely.
you're helping companies that are also helping other people, whether it's providing sugar to food companies or fulfilling a nutritional need or feeding the world, or every engagement seems to have some sort of greater meaning if you think about it and allow yourself to understand
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So I guess just to start then, how did you sort of answered this a little bit? Maybe I'll ask it again, and maybe we could just dive into this a little bit more. But how did you become interested in making this connection between some of the ancient wisdom and the sayings and the quotes that you grew up with in your current professional career? What made you decide, or what gave you that idea to make that connection, or to start making those connections through some of your thought leadership?
This is kind of interesting. So when I sit back and look, and like everyone, you go back to the roots for your answers. So this is something I've been subconsciously doing for a long period of time. And last year or year before last, something happened when I started writing for myself and shared it with very close network and colleagues. And one of them said, how about you try sharing it in one of the weekly stand-ups or a daily stand-up, because this is very encouraging and it also keeps us grounded. And I started it, and people recorded it and used it for their friends or family, which was good. So the learning for me was ancient wisdom is powerful,
Mm.
and we should do something about it. And writing is something I like, and it comes naturally to me. So why don't I use it and use the platforms that I have? So I started doing it mainly for myself, just to keep me grounded and keep me focused, and also help me see the big picture in everything I do. And then I started putting that out, and yeah, now it's a sensation. So last year, I think by Christmas we had about 1 million views. So that's
Mm.
when I was like, yeah, this is powerful. This is beyond me. I need to start sharing a bit more. So yeah, here is where we are in the journey. So we are looking. I've got a newsletter which I publish with TTA, so where we put in transformation related topics, and I also have the opportunity to share with you today. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, I'm intrigued by these quotes because I think I was telling you before we started
Mhm.
the discussion here live that I have always seen your quotes because you're really good at putting graphics, in your posts. So you'll have a graphic with a quote, but then you have some text, and I don't always read the text the way I realized, how much value is in them. And so I went back in preparation for this discussion, and I started reading all the sort of the background and not the analysis. That it's not an analysis, but it's some of the storytelling that you do behind some of the quotes, and it's really interesting. And I pulled some of my favorite ones, even though it's very difficult to do. I almost got lost in all of the content you put out there because you have so much of it on your LinkedIn page. So I picked some of my favorite ones, and I thought we could unpack them here in a minute and talk about what it means or how it ties to the world today or digital transformation, and some of the more interesting ones. And I'd be curious to hear what the audience thinks as well. So be sure to follow Judith. If you don't on LinkedIn, follow her on LinkedIn, because I think you're probably the person that shows up the most at the top of my feed whenever I get on LinkedIn.
Oh, thank you.
When
That's
you're
really
posted,
kind. So thank
the
you.
algorithm seems to know that I like your stuff.
Thank you.
So, what is it? So maybe before we dive into some of these examples of some of your ancient wisdom quotes and the thoughts behind it, why do you think that ancient wisdom can help us with modern digital and business transformations?
So, my take on it is the answer lies in us for most of the circumstances that we do. So, we've been blessed with a lot of change that our ancestors have experienced in the past, and the wisdom is in us and around us, and that's what I genuinely believe in. So, when we look at digital transformation, so yes, it's a new thing. It's been around for the last, let's say, 20, 30 years, where it has accelerated. But change has been there for a very long time. And the concepts of change is very similar. People change, people adopt, and people make everything better. So that's what we are trying to do indirectly or directly in business transformations. If we remove all the nuts and bolts of it, and if we look at the high level, what are we trying to do? Make life simpler, easier, better, and serve our stakeholders better. So that's all it is. So my relationship to ancient wisdom and business transformation is that pick what's available for us, use the concepts that are available for us because they are tried and tested, and people have lived it to leave a legacy of that quotes or those experiences, and let's make use of them. So in any circumstance that we can.
Right. Yeah, it's well said, and I totally agree with that way of thinking. I never would have thought to make that connection, but seeing you and hearing you make that connection makes total sense, and I think it's well said. Do you have a favorite? Like, see, you've spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff. You've published a lot. You've written a lot about a bunch of different quotes. Just the ones I've seen, and I'm sure there's more that you haven't published yet or haven't put out there yet. Do you have one or two that sort of rise to the surface as one of your favorites?
Yeah. So my grandparents used to tell me everything works out for good. So this happens all the time. Like if I go back with a broken heart or even a scratch on my finger or anything very simple to something very big, always the first answer that comes from grandparents is everything works out for good. And I just grew up with it. And now I got into positive intelligence, which is another thing that I'm interested in. And I'm learning a bit more about how life works and how our mind works. So, positive intelligence has a concept of viewing everything as a gift. So, they see it as viewing as a gift of opportunity or a gift of knowledge or a gift of inspiration. So, and there is a lot of scientific evidence attached to it. So, when I look back, I go, everything works together for good may seem like a simple quote, but it comes with years and years of wisdom that has been imparted in people in generations. So yeah, embracing things as anything that's happening together for good helps us or empowers us to use that opportunity to do something better. For example, the meeting that didn't go well, a simple example, you go, okay, great, so that's an opportunity. Maybe I gained some knowledge out of it, or maybe I got an inspiration, and I'll turn that into a gift. So when we have that perspective, we know we can turn everything as a gift, and we are not afraid of things going bad, because most people, when I look at it, it's like, well, this cannot fail or that cannot fail, and that's how I was as well. So when I step back and apply the knowledge of ancient wisdom, go, everything can be turned to a gift. Let's put the best foot forward, and it also increases our chance of success. So yeah, it's a
Right.
valuable knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
other one is every information matters, irrespective of who you hear it from and when you hear it from. So my grandfather especially had a habit of receiving all information. So he ran a rubber plantation. So yeah, it's a big plantation. So every information, yes, does matter, whether it comes from any source. So he used to keep a book next to him and record everything,
Hmm.
literally anything and everything he hears. And I, I've been watching him, and I asked him, why do you do it? He goes, everything matters. You never know when things are useful. So it could be simple things like the price of rubber or whatever the neighbor sold the rubber for, or to important things like it had records like the rain of the rain levels to various things. But when we look at it in our perspective, it matters. So what we hear on the program matters. What we read matters. So our brain makes a connection to what we hear, to what we read, to what is reported. So in a world of I do program management for a living. So we are driven by information. So there is, yes, information, and information can come from any source, and every piece of information is valued. So it gives us a holistic picture, and then we can work out the next steps.
Right. Right. Those are two really good ones. We're here talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
A man decides after 70 years that what he goes there for.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. My name is Eric Kimberly, here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. We're here in the midst of a conversation with Judith O'Callaghan talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. Let's jump back into the conversation. Just turning to the audience as well, and we already have some feedback from the audience. Shivali on LinkedIn says 1 million views. Wow, that's so awesome, Judith. And that is awesome. They have 1 million views of your of that specific content so far. Someone else, I want to point this out here. Dennis on LinkedIn asked the name of the guest, so I'm just putting your name up here again in case anyone missed it. It's Judith O'Callaghan. And you can find her tagged in the event page here itself, or you can also search her name on LinkedIn and you'll find her great content there. I'm actually going to pull up this quote. Is actually one of the ones I was going to ask you about, but Dan on LinkedIn brought it up as well. So maybe we'll start here and just ask, here's the first of a series of quotes in addition to the two you just shared, Judith. I'd sort of picked out some of the ones that I liked the most and thought we could talk about those, but Dan brings up one here on LinkedIn. He says, some things break our hearts, but fix our vision. I remember seeing that one too, and I thought that one stood out. So what are your thoughts there? Tell us what that means and how it sort of relates to business and leadership and transformation.
So this is one of my favorites, and this is not my quote as such. And Toby Mac captured it really well in his Speak Life. So when I saw that, I go, "Yep, that captures my heart at that point in time." So mostly when we look at it in life or business or anywhere else, a key changing point would have impacted our heart in some ways. So good or bad, that's fine. So it would have impacted in our heart in certain ways. But some of the seemingly bad stuff, when we look at it, that's what gave us the power, or that's what gave us the vision to see things that we haven't seen before. Maybe we took a different perspective, or we just changed the way we did things. or whatever happened. So it's those things that break our heart have the potential to lead us forward. So this quote was very powerful at the time I read it, and the story behind it was uh, very powerful for me. So was anything that breaks the heart, yeah, it may have fixed the vision. Yes, it is hard and it's a heartbreak, but fixing the vision is a priceless gift that one can ever have. So it just sets everyone up for success once we know where we are going and our vision is clear. So that's uh, that's the flip side of that thing. Like, yeah, it is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. Who says no to a good vision, right? So that's what we all aim for. Yeah.
Right, right. Well said.
Yeah.
How about this one? One grain of rice may tip the scale. This is one that I saw on your LinkedIn page as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this one.
So this one is quite interesting. Again, growing up, come from a place which is, which is all about eating rice. So a lot of rice quotes are quite popular. And this one, everyone used to say that it's one thing that may tip the scale. So traders normally used rice as a grain of trade for many things.
Mm.
So when we actually weigh rice, I've seen it happen. So you put rice in a balance, and it's only one grain that'll actually tip the balance and make it higher. It's a physical quotation. So we may think a grain of rice doesn't have a lot of weight to it, but when we put it on a balance and see the practicalities of weighing a grain, yes, it does have a big play. So things that I heard about this while growing up, or how the saying is applied, is they always talk about it in context of relationships. So you keep investing on relationships, and it's only one thing that you do that'll make someone your best friend, or in terms of business, a lifetime partner. So you keep trading with the family or families. So most South Indian families have traded for a very long time. But when we go back in the history and look at it, it's one thing somebody did for someone, would have tipped the scale, established a long-term relationship, and that continues for ages. So they may not be written contracts, but it's the contracts made from heart. So they're much stronger, so they continue. So I apply this in my world in different ways. So I continue investing on stakeholder relationships or vendor relationships or anything, and also being human and being available for people. So most of the relationships that I have developed over time in our industry is because of that genuine investment in time and people we care about, and also doing the right thing. And that's the grain of rice, or that's the currency of trade. Do the right thing, care for people, and always be there. You never know what tips the scale.
Yeah, yeah. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a whole book just on the tipping point and just how ideas and concepts and sociological trends,
Yeah.
how they just that little minute push over the edge can create that tipping point. And I think a lot of times in digital transformations, business transformations, the same is true. You know, it's a lot of times the minute details, the one grain of rice, you know, sometimes it pushes it one direction or the other, you know, into success or
Exactly.
failure or somewhere in between. So I think
Yeah.
it's really, really good quote. One of the ones I really liked, and especially because you had a story, um, I believe it was, I believe you were talking a biblical quote from the Bible
Okay.
about David. If I'm
Yes.
remembering correctly, I don't even
Yeah.
try to paraphrase
Mm.
it for you. I'll let you describe it rather than me trying to remember what you
Yeah.
said. Post, but recruiting from the pit. That wasn't the exact
Yeah.
quote, I don't think, but you talk about recruiting from the pit, and I love this quote because it's. I believe I never
Yeah.
frame it this way, but this is how I recruit for our team and how I built the
Mhm.
team third stage in many ways. But I'd love to hear, you know, kind of your thoughts behind this, the story behind it, and what this quote means.
So yeah, this is a powerful thing, and I try to apply the knowledge of what I gathered here in different ways. So one of the things my grandfather used to say, or I used to sit with him as a child in the interviews or when he hires anyone. So it's always about, he talks about the challenges the person had. He never talked about the achievements or the laurels or anything that the person had. So I used to look at it like when I attended interviews, it was as an adult, it is about tell me the things that you have done and what can you do for us. So when people ask about what you've done in the past, it's pretty much asking what can you do for us. So it's the indirect reason behind the ask. So and then I compared my grandfather's strategies. Why is he always talking about the failures? He all asks about the heartbreak and betrayals and all the other things that people don't necessarily ask about in the interviews. You try and keep it positive. So, and then I came across David's story. David's a very powerful character because I like David's character because he his lifetime or his reign during the biblical times have had the most transformations. So a country was just being born under a king, and then he comes in and takes over the kingdom, or he's been inherited the kingdom, and then he has to work on stabilizing the kingdom. And when he left it or handed it over to his the people after him, the country was in a beautiful state. It had finances, it had everything that is needed. So when I look at David, is an amazing transformation leader for me. I get a lot of inspiration from him. So one of the things I started doing was analyzing the army or analyzing how he built the team. So I think I forgot the chapter where it was. It was 1 Samuel 23 or something. So you might know it better than I do, Eric. So where it talks about anyone that is broken, disheartened. It wasn't a perfect army like wherein, someone had so many stars or something. The qualification for the army was someone with a heavy heart, someone who has fought the war, or fought the battle, someone who has the scars to show. What a great thing. Like with this, where else can you get the experience? So when I apply it in my world or our world of digital transformation, you go, let's talk about where people have had their hearts broken, or it's the vulnerabilities that make us stronger. So, and
Right.
together we can leave a legacy. So that's how I interpreted it. And for me, that recruiting from the pit, the concept spoke to me dearly. So,
Yeah, and you go on to talk about how it's about recruiting from the pit, not recruiting from the pedestal, I think is what you said
yes,
too. It's
exactly.
and
Yeah.
I think you relate that to, building a team or a high performing team, whether it's for a transformation or an IT department or any other function in a business. It's easy to go out and hire someone who on paper looks super qualified and has a great history and a great background. And that's important. I don't want to be dismissive of
Important.
that,
Yeah.
but you also want to get into the character of the people that you're hiring and too. Are they hungry? Do they have something to prove? Are they going to want to collaborate with people because they like helping people, or you just getting into the
Yeah.
psyche and the backgrounds of people. I
Absolutely.
have a friend who is also he's a high up executive at a large financial services company, and he's a big culture guy. So when he hires his team, it's all about culture. He doesn't care as much about college degrees. I mean, you have to have education and a minimum level of knowledge, of course, but
Yeah.
his biggest thing is culture. And so I was asking him one day at a social outing. I was saying, well, how do you get to the bottom of culture, and how do you handle that recruiting piece of it? And it's really interesting because he said, I don't ask about their professional background. And I said, well, what do you ask about then if you're not asking about their professional background? He said, I ask about their upbringing. I ask about their childhood. I ask about their parents. I ask about what they did in school, what they did after school, what they did for fun. And he said, it just tells you so much about the person and who they are and what makes them tick and what motivates them and all that sort of stuff. And it also gives you a good indication of whether or not they're a good cultural fit. So that's sort of what came back to me when I read your story in your post about recruiting
Yeah.
for the bit, because it's sort of like you're not necessarily it's different. It's quite different from or it might be easy to misinterpret that to think, well, are you
Yes.
scraping the bottom of the barrel? Is that what you mean? And it's not lesser
No, it's
qualified
not.
people.
Yeah.
It's you're recruiting people that are have aspirations, and they they have a lot of
Yeah.
character is my interpretation of that quote.
Yeah. Exactly. And
Yeah.
you're looking for someone who'll be there for the other person when it matters most. That's what it's all about, right?
Right. We're here talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. My name is Eric Kimberly, here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. We're here in the midst of a conversation with Judith O'Callaghan talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. Let's jump back into the conversation. Yeah, and here's an interesting follow-up here from Laik on LinkedIn, who says there's always ease and success after failure.
So that's very true. Yeah, absolutely. So it's the failure which becomes the foundation for success, right? So yeah, we can all talk about our success, but we don't necessarily talk about our failures. So
yeah, it's not always as fun or as comfortable to talk about failure as it is to talk about success, but there's arguably a lot more lessons from those failures than there are from the successes, I would say. How about this one? Here's another one that stood out to me, which is a rock gives way to the tree root, while it does not budge for an axe. I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yes. So first time I was told, I heard this, I think I was 8 years old. So I was trying to have a very hard time negotiating something. And
with your parents?
This was and this was from my mom or dad at that time, and said, well, look at the tree root. It always wins over the rock. And that saying was interpreted in different ways. So, and the class teacher told me the same thing the following day. And I go, okay, how did it all happen? And they explained the story behind it. The region where I grew up had a lot of granite rocks, and ancestors tried whatever they could to make it suitable for agriculture. So naturally, take a hammer and break the rock. And as a result, a lot of them lost a lot of hammers and a lot of tools. And some person along the line decided to plant figs. And figs took root and broke the rocks, and also created an ecosystem where things can flourish, like, because figs are quite big, so you can plant under it and things can grow, and also birds can stay in the trees and stuff. So the moral of the whole saying is that look for a smoother, easier way, because it gives you an outcome in the long run. Though it may be harder, you're getting a more sustainable outcome. So I've heard another version of it, which is like, better to be in peace than being right, because peace is better for business. So we tend to get caught on being right, especially in the digital transformation world, where everyone, fights about being right. But that's okay. There is also a lot of value in choosing to be peaceful, because peaceful people are likely to get more business. So you don't have to be right all the time, or you don't have to state that you're right all the time. Same as, try the fig tree approach, where we know the rock will eventually give way and you'll get a more sustainable result. You can still use the hammer and all the other tools, but that's just another option if we have the time and patience.
Right. Yeah, and it's when you think about organizational change too, you think about changing people, changing behavior, and getting people to buy into changes within a transformation. You could take the axe approach, where you're trying to force it and you're trying to force people to change, or you could take the tree root approach, where you're sort of finessing people the direction you want them to go, or the direction the organization needs to go. And I think a lot of times executives forget that because they think the axe is, they can use an axe because they're
Oh
executives.
yeah.
They just can. So, so they think, well, we might as well use an axe. So I think it's a good
Access,
metaphor.
yeah, and it's also accessible and it's a tool of choice, right? So you increase your chance of success and you can see it during your lifetime. But with the tree root, you need patience, you need to grow. So yeah.
Yeah. But it's arguably more
Mm.
sustained
Oh
growth
yeah,
and more,
sustainable. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Let's see. Here's another one. How we walk with the
Oh yeah.
broken speaks louder than how we sit with the great. Tell us about that one.
Yes. So this one again was from David. So King David, when I read his life. So he spent most of his time with the troops, his soldiers. Excuse me. So his team was interesting. So as a result, he had to spend a lot of time with his troops, developing them, growing them, and all that good things that we normally do as leaders. What amazed me was that he could have flipped and spent a lot more time with with other kings or other nations, but then he chose to develop the team, and he did it with most genuine ways of working. So this helped him develop a better nation. So when we translate it now, it is the broken who actually need the attention, whoever it is, and how we navigate that situation makes us who we are, and we make us we we grow in that process, and we are better people as a result of how we sit with the broken. And you can always sit with the great, and then it's very easy to go to the pub or a nice restaurant to have dinner, and it's really hard to be with a colleague who has just been through a failure or something. So but thinking about weighing up who needs us most, it's the other one.
Right.
I'm just going
Yeah.
off camera to get some water, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem. I'll turn to the audience here while you're doing that. Yeah, that's it. Those are great points there. And here's a really interesting comment from Kyler on LinkedIn. And Kyler says, I asked ChatGPT for the best quote around business transformation. And the response she got was, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, but to act with yesterday's logic. That was from Peter Drucker. So I guess you could call it relatively ancient, but not ancient in the way Judith is describing some of the quotes that she's been using here. But Peter Drucker is from the last few decades, has been putting out a lot of great thought leadership and management guru type of stuff. So that's another good quote. And I'd be curious to hear from the audience too. What are some of your favorite quotes, whether it's ancient wisdom or just other, leadership, motivational business gurus? Love to hear any feedback you have there. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that last one, or if you heard that, Judith. Not quite ancient wisdom in the way you typically discuss, but a traditional or a classic quote, I guess I would call it, from Peter Drucker.
Everyone knows him, right? Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do love him. Yeah, and there is a reason why he's a guru in management, right? Everybody would have read him. We all would have read him in our MBAs. So yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of the favorites. And some of the things that he has put forward in his book, we may be able to relate directly to ancient wisdom, and some of it, yeah.
Right.
I did find him very powerful, Peter Drucker. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good for sure. How about this is a good question from Kyler. What is your favorite source of? I know a lot of you quote a lot from the Bible and other
Yeah.
but what are your favorite sources for some of these quotes that you write about?
So this is interesting, right? So yes, my roots, and you know, I read the Bible and I'm a firm believer in it. So yeah, Bible is definitely my source, and that's where my inspiration comes from. And I also have other sources, and most importantly, the source of heart. So the heart knows what it wants, and it always gets what it wants, and it gets this information from the past and the present. And some elders believe it's from the future as well. So as long as we are guided by our heart, we are okay. So
Right.
in life or work, so yeah, two main sources, and also guidance from above.
Right. Absolutely. Here's another quote from Laik. I'm not sure who the
Yeah,
quote
I can
is
read it.
from, but people's deeds are a mirror to the leader. The state of the people is a reflection of the state of the leader. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
this
That's
is very powerful, isn't it? And positive intelligence talks about mirror neurons and everything, and leader seem to have a lot of influence. That is three times of three leaders have three times more influence than a peer. So if a leader is positive, we are likely to be more positive. So there you go. Leaders do matter, and we've been blessed, so that's good.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Sounds simple enough, but so many leaders fail to recognize that, or they
Mhm.
don't fully understand the power that they have sometimes. So I think it's a
Yeah.
good point.
And it's a responsibility as well, right? So as leaders, we have a responsibility towards our team to be positive and guide. So that's our first. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to come back to one. This is actually the first
Yeah.
one I was going to ask you, but I
Mhm.
ended up going down the list and covering some other ones first. But here's another one that I pulled from your LinkedIn
Yeah.
postings in your newsletter, and that is
Mhm.
let's respond with grace even when others don't. What are some of your
So
thoughts?
yeah, this is a powerful one for me. So we are taught to like, how do I say this? We naturally react to things and not respond to things. So, and it's a conscious choice to respond. So when we respond as well, we have a choice to respond in different ways. So choosing to respond with grace is a conscious choice, and not everyone does it. So especially in tough times, you know, we have the right thing to do, the kind thing to do. So am I responding with the kind thing to do with grace? And am I delivering the same information with grace? So that's the questions that I asked myself. And I have this in my office and I have it printed everywhere because it's a very powerful reminder, so that it is for us leaders to set the example, to choose to respond with grace, even if others don't. So, and the second part is it gets harder when, especially when you're in a heated debate or forcing an idea or whatever it is, right, in the world of transformation that we do. So it's about responding with grace. That makes everything smoother, easier, better for us, not necessarily for the other person. But we know we have chosen to respond to that situation or that whatever it is with grace. And it makes us better people every day.
Right. Right. We're here talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. My name is Eric Kimberly, here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. We're here in the midst of a conversation with Judith O'Callaghan talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. Let's jump back into the conversation. That I think maybe tais some of these ancient wisdom quotes, sort of brings us back to the future or back to the present, however you want to frame it. But this is from Rushi on LinkedIn. Rushi says, what according to you, is the relevance of a newly thrown around term called MTP, massive transformative purpose. I have not heard this acronym, so I'm not familiar with it. I don't know if you've heard it or if you have any interpretation of this phrase.
This is a very new concept to me as well. So, all I have is a very big, very simple Google knowledge.
Right.
We do have a purpose everyone is driven to. So my take on it is everyone needs a tribe and a purpose. So this is a blessing that's normally given to someone who hits puberty. So may you find your tribe, may you find your purpose. So it comes down to those two things. And yes, purpose is a big thing. So
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with the whole concepts or the depths of it. So.
Yeah, it just sounds like something, even though it's a newer buzzword, it sounds like something with that focus on purpose. It sounds like something that, you might see or relate to some of these ancient quotes and ancient wisdom that you write about.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So what other so those are sort of the 5 or 7 quotes that I had pulled out from your LinkedIn page. Are there other ones that you think are really worthy of keeping at the forefront of our minds when it comes to leading a transformation or being part of a transformation? Do any others sort of bubble to the surface as ones that you think we should talk about?
So I like the character Abigail, who is the kind of the second line leader during King David's times. She's his wife and also played a very big part in the leadership. So what I really like about that style of leadership is it was always working around the constraints. So working around the constraints is more powerful than working through the constraints when we translate it that way. And it's translated from my native language, but not necessarily. I'm not using a word by word translation, but the summary is, working around the constraints is always better because constraints are going to be there in some shapes or forms and all of that, and we may not be able to remove all the constraints. So there are things that could be non-negotiables that we may not be able to remove. So adopting a mindset of what constraints that we can work around enables us to get things smoother and easier and better. And also, bigger is not necessarily better. So being purpose built gets you far better, far further than anything that you can think of. And my favorite one is, we go further by walking together. And our strength lies in our differences and not in our similarities. So this is an ancient Indian quote, and it's two phases. Our strength lies in our differences and not in our similarities. And it's elders who know the way, and the youth can walk faster.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so many of these quotes that you've talked about are things that can be related to any sort of project team building and leadership and digital transformation, business transformation, and all that good stuff. Certainly change management. I feel like a lot of the quotes we've been talking about are relative to how you lead change and how you manage change and how you collaborate as a team. And really that's what these business and digital transformations are all about. So it's very interesting. So are there any upcoming quotes that you are about to post on LinkedIn or write about that you could share with us, or ones that you haven't published yet? I'm just curious if you have kind of a queue or a backlog of quotes that you want to write about.
So most of my writing is done well in advance, in the sense, I should say almost a year in advance at the moment. So, and that's how far we go. My next one that I'm looking to publish is on the elders know the way, the youth can walk fast. So it's about a story on what we can do by taking time to understand the way, and then it enables us to walk faster. So so that's something that I'm looking to publish. I'm shaping that up at the moment. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's about a conscious pause to understand the way so we can walk faster.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of elders, I don't know if this helps you
Mm,
in your writing or not, but I feel like it relates to this discussion. But it just coincidentally, before we started this discussion, I was going back through. I read all the comments
mm.
I get on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. And on one of my YouTube videos that I just published yesterday, it's gone somewhat viral. And I was reading the
Oh,
comments
nice.
on there. And one of the comments, yeah, I was talking about why digital transformations are failing at an
Mm,
increasing rate. That's what the premise of the video is. And one of the comments here, unrelated to this live discussion, but I feel
mm,
like it is related. But they didn't post it in this discussion.
mm.
But they said this is from someone named Seth on YouTube, and Seth said the Boomer generation is retiring en masse and not passing on their expertise through digital transformations. Gen X and millennials need to do a better job capturing this expertise before it's too late. So
That's
again,
very
totally
true.
unrelated to this conversation,
Yeah,
directly unrelated, but it's very related. I mean,
that's
it's
very true,
we're
right?
talking about the
Yeah. We definitely have a huge population who's retiring in the next X number of years, and we need to invest time and energy to capture their knowledge because once they retire, we are starting from the scratch. That knowledge would leave us. So, yeah, elders definitely know the way. So,
right,
yeah, it'll
right.
take time to capture them. Yeah,
Yeah, and
and the other,
you
yeah,
forget that sometimes because technology. Sometimes you think
mm,
technology is a young man or woman's game,
yeah,
and older people don't know as much about technology, or that's sort of a stereotype, an
yeah,
inaccurate stereotype. But I think a lot of times we forget, to your point, that the elders have this wisdom, that
yeah,
years and years of experience, decades of experience. That how can we leverage some of that? And that's exactly why we're chatting about it here today.
absolutely, yeah. And the other one is always we look to leave a legacy. So everyone, whether we choose or not, we leave a legacy and let it be a good one. So
Right,
we have the choice and we can make it powerful and
right,
rewrite our story. Yeah.
right. So I guess just to sort of wrap this all together, in sort of thinking about how we move forward with our change initiatives, our business transformations, our digital transformations, whatever role we might have on those. What closing ancient wisdom or advice would you leave with someone who's about to begin a digital transformation journey? Is there sort of one quote or a couple different quotes that you think are sort of encapsulates what you need to know or the way you should be thinking as you go through a transformation within a business?
So my take on it is what the quotes that have been handed over to me, which is every information matters,
Mm,
even if it is from a very small source. Every information matters and value it. The other one is everything works out together for good. So as we embark on transformations, not everything is going to be positive, and success is not going to be a story from day one. So it's a series of small failures that will eventually stack success. So embrace everything, celebrate everything, because it's leading all of us into something very beautiful. So
mm.
that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's a good quote for just the value of listening. I mean, when you're going through a transformation, it's easy to focus on the future state and the vision and the way things could be, and it's oftentimes easy to be dismissive or to maybe be flippant about the way things are, the way things were in the past. And you don't want to get too caught up in the past, but there's value in listening and understanding, what people like about the current state or what challenges they're going through as part of the current transition or the transformation. So there's just a lot of, I think focusing on the listening aspect is really important, especially if you're a leader or a consultant. I feel like those are the two roles where you need it the most. You need that listening acumen to be able to
Yes.
do what your grandfather did or told you to do, which
Yeah.
is to listen. Listen to, and to say the quote one more time. Every information is
Every information matters. Yeah.
every information matters. Yeah, it's a great point.
Every information.
Yeah, so that's a good one. So what are your plans for these quotes? Do you plan to consolidate all this into book, or do you, obviously you're going to continue, it seems like you're going to continue writing these newsletters and that sort of thing, but what is your future in terms of taking these quotes and these lessons?
So definitely continue writing, and the book is coming along, and I'm hoping it'll be ready by end of the year. So it is definitely on this topic and how we can embrace it. And the other one is we are looking at a podcast. So I'm sure Eric, you and I will have more conversations there. So good things coming our way. Yeah.
That's great. That's very cool. It's cool how you've carved out this niche, sort of a very unique niche in a ever changing technological landscape. It's really cool to see what you're doing here. So what are the best ways for people to follow you? Is it LinkedIn? Are there other ways for people to get a hold of you? How can we connect with you?
So LinkedIn is my favorite social media of choice at the moment. So I post mostly there. So follow me there, and I'll have the link for my other publications in LinkedIn, so you can connect if anyone's interested. You can connect and read them there.
All right, thank you, Judith. Great conversation. Very relevant topic here today, and a really interesting topic too. That's unlike anything we've ever covered in the show. So thank you for being here today. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
When things are big that should be small, who can tell what magic spells will be doing?
Are you looking to stay ahead of the curve in the ever-changing landscape of digital transformation? Then you need our newly released 2023 Digital Transformation Report. This comprehensive report covers the latest trends, technologies, and strategies to ensure your digital transformation is optimized for success. The 2023 Digital Transformation Report is packed full of proven methodologies and insights from experts in the independent digital transformation field. You'll also receive practical insights on how to implement digital transformation strategies within your unique organization. This free report is available for download on our website at thirdstage-consulting.com under our Thought Leadership section.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham, and we just had Judith O'Callaghan on the show talking about when ancient wisdom meets digital transformation. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation, Kyler?
Well, I mean, what a really interesting topic. It definitely wasn't where I thought you guys were going when I saw the live stream come on. But I basically ran over to her profile and followed her, which I already did, but made her part of my favorites. So the algorithm will, hopefully bless me with some of her content. But what an interesting conversation. I love the ability to kind of break down that ancient wisdom into more of a technical aspect. Not only the people side, but the technology side as well. And she's so interesting in the fact that she has the ability to kind of integrate that change management talk track with the more technical implementation talk track, which is just such a unicorn quality in a consultant, certainly, especially in our industry.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's very true.
It reminded me of when I always say, I'm a corporate dropout, but it reminded me of when I worked for a bigger Fortune 500 company, and I was part of this select group of young leaders, and we had to go through this specific training. And part of that training, I had to pick a quote that best represented my leadership style, and I picked one from Princess Diana that said, "Lead with your heart instead of your head." And people had to react to it. And the IT group young leader, that they designated, he specifically said, that will never work in IT. That doesn't, that's not, we can't utilize that because we were more technical, and who knows where he is today. But it reminded me of the importance of just embracing that opportunity to see things differently when it comes to putting together a leadership team or a core team, and the opportunity in others' perspectives. So that could have A, really hurt my feelings, or B, it could have taught me a lot about how that department operated, or an opportunity to see leadership in a different way. So it reminded me kind of that scenario, and kind of bringing grace to the conversation.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I've never been asked that before, to pick a quote that best describes you or represents who you are. So that's I'm glad I haven't had to do that, and thank you for in advance for not asking me to do that now, because I'm terrible at remembering quotes. So,
Well, either way, I highly recommend, if you have a quote. I kind of want to make a content category around quotes. So if you have a quote that really inspires you, definitely drop it in the comments here, and we'll kind of create and tag you in some of our quote library, so we can all be inspired.
yeah, yeah, good stuff. Yeah, a lot of good quotes, and there's we probably covered maybe a dozen of her quotes that she's written about, but I know she has several more dozen that we didn't get to. So a lot of really thought provoking stuff on there. So be sure to check her out on LinkedIn. And by the way, I didn't know you could add favorites or tag someone as a favorite, so it'll show up at the top of your feed. I did not know that, so that's good to know as well.
I don't know if they show up at the top of your feed, but you can add them to like your most followed categories. So I'm just hoping and praying that she'll show up in the top of my feed. But the more you get
So,
engaged with her, I think the more opportunity is to see her content.
yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Well, good. Well, we're glad to have her on the show. We'll have to have her back on, and we could spend hours unpacking her quotes and still not have enough time to get through it all. So it was great to have her on for the first time, and appreciate the audience questions as well. And I'm curious to see what the audience says as far as some of their favorite quotes too in the chat here. So look forward to reading that when you all post some of your favorite quotes. So we're going to shift gears a bit, move totally away, do a 180 here, and move away from ancient wisdom, not because we don't like it, because we've got another topic to cover, and that is Infor versus SAP. We recently published a video Kyler and I did on our Third Stage YouTube channel that talks about a comparison between Infor and SAP. And in that, we do some analysis of how the two compare and how you might navigate that decision if you're looking at those two products. And even if you're not looking at those two products, it's also a helpful conversation because it'll hopefully get the wheels turning on some considerations that you should be thinking about as you evaluate whatever ERP system or systems you might be considering or evaluating as part of your software selection and digital strategy. So we're going to play you that clip when we come back from a quick break. We'll also unpack it a bit and discuss it after that clip. But first, we'll take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
Just tell me what you've got to say to me. I've been waiting for so long to hear.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. So be sure to check us out there. So Kyler and I recently created a video called Infor versus SAP, and we thought we'd play you a clip here of that video here today and have a chat about it afterwards. And this is very helpful, certainly if you're considering either or both of these systems, Infor and or SAP. But even if you're not, it's also a good conversation to really get the wheels turning in terms of what it is you should be thinking about or considering as you evaluate potential ERP systems for your digital transformation. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and roll the clip, and then we'll come back and discuss it some more.
In today's video, we're going to cover reviews of two of the titans in the industry, SAP S/4HANA versus Infor Cloud Suite. Our CEO and founder, Eric Kimberling, will actually go into detailed reviews of each system, and we'll summarize with some considerations around which system might be best for you and your business. So with that, let's jump into it.
Now, when we're working with our clients, especially in the manufacturing and distribution space, those tend to be the types of organizations that are most likely to gravitate toward Infor Cloud Suite. So companies, for example, that are food and beverage or aerospace and defense or industrial manufacturing, those types of organizations tend to find the most value in the Infor Cloud Suite product. And much of the capability that has been built over the years within the product is designed for these industry verticals. In addition to manufacturing and distribution, we also see a lot of organizations in retail and consumer goods. That's another area, whether it's fashion, apparel, retail, other sorts of consumer goods. Those are all types of organizations that we see a lot of organizations leverage Infor Cloud Suite for, and those tend to be the types of organizations that find a good fit with the Cloud Suite product. One of the strengths of Infor Cloud Suite is its flexibility, especially when you compare the product to other big ERP vendors that are designed to scale for larger organizations, products such as SAP S/4HANA or Oracle ERP Cloud. Infor Cloud Suite has a lot of flexibility when compared to those and other types of ERP systems in the marketplace. And part of the reason for the flexibility is not just because the products themselves are generally more flexible than some of the other systems in the market, but also because Infor has grown through acquiring other types of systems and other technologies. So for example, Infor acquired Lawson as one example, which was a popular ERP system used by a lot of government and nonprofit types of organizations, among others. And that's just one example of the types of acquisitions they've made. In addition, Infor acquired Bond many years ago, which Bond was one of the pioneers of ERP software and focusing primarily on manufacturing and distribution types of companies. But the whole point in here is that because Infor has acquired all these different companies over the years, it's allowed them to build a pretty broad and diverse set of capabilities that they've now been able to migrate and start migrating into the Cloud Suite solution, which is their flagship solution built for the cloud. So if this sort of flexibility is important to you and you're the type of organization that's changing very quickly, growing very rapidly, Infor Cloud Suite could be a great option for you. Now, one of the downsides of Infor Cloud Suite is the fact that many of our clients and team members have observed that Infor has somewhat of an old school, outdated look and feel when it comes to user interface. So when you compare Infor Cloud Suite to some of the other systems in the marketplace, some of the more recent, more modern ERP cloud solutions, such as say NetSuite or even Microsoft D365, it doesn't have that modern, intuitive look and feel that a lot of user interfaces have with other systems. That doesn't mean the technology doesn't work or that the functional capabilities may not be a great fit for your organization. But when you think about user adoption and how easy it's going to be for people to learn the new system, that can make it a little bit more challenging in terms of just figuring out how to navigate the system and how to take advantage of some of the great benefits and functionalities that the system has. So if user interface is a really important part of your evaluation process, Infor probably isn't going to rate as high as some of the other options on your shortlist, but it's something worth noting as you evaluate Cloud Suite versus other systems in the marketplace. Now, given the size and breadth of Infor as a company and also the products that they've acquired and developed over the years, there's a lot of broad capabilities that the software provides. And this is one of their biggest strengths, is the fact that they're able to provide a broad set of capabilities that really does rival that of SAP or Oracle or Microsoft D365, some of those bigger ERP systems that are designed for larger, more complex, more diverse organizations. And Cloud Suite does a great job of this. Some specific examples of where Infor Cloud Suite is strong in terms of its functional capability are things like manufacturing and distribution, which I already mentioned. But in addition to that, there's a number of pretty innovative features that the system provides. For example, predictive analytics, especially within the supply chain functionality, is something that Infor Cloud Suite is very good at. So really trying to predict what the supply chain needs are, what the bottlenecks are, and ultimately what sorts of planning needs to be done for the supply chain. That's a unique capability that a lot of other systems don't have. Another example is the whole configure, price, and quote capability. So in other words, organizations that are selling complex make-to-order types of products or even services, being able to take different variables on the sales side and be able to construct an offering for a customer, being able to price it out, being able to provide a quote, and ultimately being able to translate that proposal into an order that can then naturally and organically feed into the manufacturing and distribution processes is something that Infor Cloud Suite is very good at as well. And the whole configure price quote function is something that a lot of systems out there don't do very well. So if you are a manufacturer of make to order or engineer to order types of products, then this can be a very strong capability for your organization. Another example of strong capability within Infor Cloud Suite is related to retail and apparel and fashion in particular. When you think about apparel and fashion, you're dealing with different colors, different sizes of the same product, which requires a certain amount of complexity in your supply chain because it's not as simple as just keeping track of your inventory and orders related to one SKU or product. You're also having to track the color and size behind that, which can throw a curveball or a monkey wrench into your entire supply chain planning, warehouse, and distribution processes if you don't have that capability. So apparel and fashion and anything to do with retail, for that matter, is something that Infor Cloud Suite is particularly strong at as well. And then finally, one other example is food and beverage. That's another area that Cloud Suite seems to thrive, and Infor as an organization and as a product suite tends to focus on and do very well in. And again, food and beverage is a unique type of industry. There's process-based manufacturing where you're dealing with not necessarily discrete units of measure. You're dealing with volumes. So you're dealing with a number of ounces, or you're converting ounces into specific discrete units of measure. That whole process can get very kludgy and very difficult if you don't have the right capabilities. So this is another area that Infor Cloud Suite tends to thrive. So these are just a few examples of the many strengths that the product has, and these are some of the differentiators that we find when we're helping clients through their evaluation processes of Infor Cloud Suite relative to other products in the market. Now, one of the disadvantages or challenges of working with Infor as an organization and with its product suite is the fact that it has a fairly complex roadmap, and in some ways that roadmap isn't as clear as it could be. And part of the reason for that is because they do have so many different products. They've acquired a bunch of different products over the years, and they have large install bases in a lot of these different products, which is a strength, and that's a good thing. But when it comes to what is the future of Cloud Suite, which Cloud Suite is sort of that flagship product that they're focusing a lot of R&D dollars in, what does that mean in terms of, for example, Infor Sightline or Lawson that we talked about earlier, or Infor M3? These are three very common systems that are still being used by a lot of different customers. And in fact, Infor is still selling those products to customers either as part of an overall Cloud Suite offering or independently of the flagship Cloud Suite solution. So when looking at what direction you want to go or what systems you want to evaluate within the Infor suite, it's really important to recognize and understand what exactly is it that you're being sold and demoed, and what exactly is it that you'd be contracting. Are you buying the most modern system that's available? Are you buying a legacy product that may go away someday? What exactly is that roadmap? And so those are some of the questions that need to be answered, and Infor is slowly starting to do a better job of articulating that roadmap. But it's something that you want to make sure you understand and navigate, because it's usually not as simple as just going out and buying Cloud Suite as of right now. Oftentimes you're buying Cloud Suite along with pieces or capabilities of other systems that have not yet been migrated to the flagship solution. So these are just some things to keep in mind as you evaluate Infor compared to other systems in the market. We are here playing you a clip of our analysis of Infor versus SAP. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. We're here playing you a clip of our recent video about how Infor and SAP compare to one another. Let's jump back into the clip. One of the benefits of working with a product suite like Infor Cloud Suite is that Infor was recently fully acquired by Koch Industries. And Koch Industries had invested in the company several years ago, but in more recent months and years, Koch has completed a full acquisition of Infor. And what this means is now Infor has more money at their disposal, for lack of a better word. There's more money being invested in the company, which is going towards R&D and really furthering the development and the innovation of the product. And this is really important as you think about ERP vendors that are not, say, SAP, Oracle, or Microsoft, the really big guys. When you get down to that next tier, you want to know that you're dealing with a software vendor that has the resources and the R&D dollars to really keep up. So these higher R&D dollars and resources are something to consider as you evaluate Infor relative to other systems in the marketplace. So Infor Cloud Suite, just like any other ERP system you might be evaluating, has its pros and cons, and strengths and weaknesses. So the key is to figure out what the best solution is for you and what your priorities are and whether or not Infor Cloud Suite might be the best fit.
As Eric mentioned in that video, Infor Cloud Suite has a lot of great potential, especially within its flexibility in the marketplace. Infor is actually number 3 on our top recommended systems for our clients and their ERP implementations. With any system, the most important part is that it meets the needs of the organization. So throughout your evaluation process, you want to be ensure you have a clear vision and strategy and understand the needs and requirements of your business. Some key considerations when looking at Infor Cloud Suite specifically is that the Cloud Suite product is still an emerging tool. While Infor is a really mature and sophisticated product, Cloud Suite, however, is still being developed as its SaaS-based product. So it's important to remember that the on-premise model has not been fully migrated to the cloud. This doesn't necessarily mean that the product is not a great fit for your organization, just again, a consideration when looking at if Infor is right for you. Something that we see a lot as a consideration with M4 too, and a great positive aspect of the product is its flexibility. It is much more flexible than big standardized systems like SAP S/4HANA, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here. But it's important to remember that flexibility doesn't necessarily mean usability. As we always say, just because you can change a software doesn't mean you should change a software. Oftentimes, when we see Infor being deployed or implemented in an organization, sometimes within an Infor implementation, we see organizations lose some of the basic needs of a successful technology implementation because of the flexibility of the product. They often dilute the overall core value to meet specific and very detailed needs of the business, when really the more successful route is making sure that they activate all of the value-driven aspects of the core product. Specifically, when implementing these really flexible systems, change management is a key tactic to ensuring that your project stays on time, on budget, and that you identify any resistance or disruption to the business before the implementation loses value. Another key consideration of Infor is just their overall saturation of support in the marketplace. When we look at a system like SAP S/4HANA that has specific consultants all over the world, Infor doesn't quite have the same saturation. So when you're looking at specific SIs or deployment team outsourced support, you want to ensure that they have those key competencies in deploying Infor within the marketplace, specifically within your industry. The last consideration I'll touch on today, which can really go for any technology implementation, is the lack of benefits realization. So when you look at something like Infor that is an incredibly flexible product, and say you have a very sophisticated implementation plan, which is great, but then you don't really look at the benefits realization metrics to ensure that you're maximizing the value of your system. The key here is to having effective project oversight and management, really dedicated and disciplined project governance, and a key benefits realization plan to ensure that your technology is optimized to its full value. I hope that helps you understand Infor Cloud Suite and all of its capabilities and considerations when looking at it for your organization. If you'd like more information about Infor, feel free to visit our website. We have a variety of blogs, our YouTube channel. You can search the videos for our Infor reviews. And then you can also look at Eric Kimberling's channel, where that video came from, and have some more information available there. So let's get into one of the biggest systems on the marketplace, if not arguably the biggest, which is SAP S/4HANA. Now, SAP S/4HANA has a lot of conflicting and passionate reviews from our industry. And because of that, a lot of times SAP is given a bad rap, but it is a very sophisticated system that's a great fit for many organizations. So just like Infor, we are going to bring in Eric Kimberling to talk about the specific reviews of SAP S/4HANA.
And just like every system out there, S/4HANA has its strengths and weaknesses, its pros and cons and trade-offs, and I want to talk candidly about what some of those trade-offs are here today. Before I get started, I'll just note that Third Stage and myself, none of us are affiliated with SAP or any other vendor for that matter, so our goal is to give you a completely technology agnostic and objective view of the strengths and weaknesses of S/4HANA. Now, let's start with the strengths of S/4HANA. There's a lot of things that S/4HANA can bring to the table. The first thing is standardization. S/4HANA's strength, just like some of the legacy SAP products like ECC and R3, its strength is helping companies standardize its business processes. It's built for big companies, it's built for complex companies, and it's built for organizations that are looking for efficiency of throughput and common business transactions and common business processes in a way that brings the entire organization together. So that's one of the biggest strengths that S/4HANA brings to the table, especially if you compare it to systems like Oracle or Microsoft Dynamics, which are generally more flexible systems that almost give you too much leash to change the software too much. S/4HANA is a system that drives more standardization in a way that helps enable that standardization if that's what's important to you as an organization. Another strength of S/4HANA is the breadth of capabilities. A lot of multinational, diversified organizations across the world are using S/4HANA, and so S/4HANA is built for these larger, more complex organizations, companies that do complex manufacturing or procurement or financial services, distribution companies, retail. There's a lot of different capabilities built within S/4HANA, and being the largest ERP provider in the space, dealing with the largest and most diversified organizations, it almost has to have that breadth of capability. And so that's one of the biggest strengths that the product brings, is that breadth of capability. Now, one word of warning as it relates to this strength, for those of you that have used ECC or R3 in the past or any of the other legacy SAP products, is that S/4HANA isn't quite caught up yet in terms of the breadth of capabilities of the older solutions. They're well on their way. They have more breadth of capability than a lot of ERP systems in the market right now. But as SAP continues its transition from ECC to S/4HANA, not all those capabilities are brought over yet to this new platform. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but in general, that's still a strength of S/4HANA. Another big strength of SAP, being the largest ERP software provider in the space, is that they have a big research and development, or R&D, budget. They are investing heavily in new technologies, things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, and a lot of bleeding edge, cutting edge technologies and capabilities that a lot of ERP systems don't have yet. And quite frankly, a lot of other ERP systems are trying to emulate those capabilities. So SAP is on the forefront of a lot of different technologies. Blockchain, for example, is another example that comes to mind. So a lot of things that they're doing to invest heavily in R&D really bodes well for the future of users of S/4HANA, because they can take comfort knowing that a lot of money is being invested in the product to make it better as time goes on. And finally, a more technical strength of the product is the HANA platform itself, the HANA database. Now, SAP built the HANA database to decrease its dependency on Oracle to provide the databases, which is kind of strange because SAP and Oracle compete against one another in the ERP space, but SAP is actually a customer of Oracle for providing the Oracle databases to SAP for some of those legacy SAP products. So with S/4HANA, they created their own database, their own HANA architecture that performs very well. It's very fast, it's performs in real time, so you can get real-time visibility into transactions and work in progress and financial information. And every vendor says they can do that. Every ERP vendor out there just about will focus on the real-time performance, real-time analytics, and that sort of thing. But SAP's database actually allows them to do that with the way it's built. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of how it's built. There's other videos out there on YouTube that'll explain that to you. But in general, HANA and the platform is world-class. It's a cutting-edge type of database and architecture that allows for faster performance for the ERP system itself as it relates to analytics.
We are here playing you a clip of our analysis of Infor versus SAP. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
Could you whisper in my ear the things you want to feel? I'll give you energy.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Everything you ever dreamed to be complete. Just inside of nothing that's all.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. We're here playing you a clip of our recent video about how Infor and SAP compare to one another. Let's jump back into the clip.
Now, just like every ERP system out there and every independent review that we've done on the YouTube channel, there are weaknesses to S/4HANA as well, in addition to the strengths that I've mentioned here. And the first one is lack of flexibility. On one hand, I mentioned that standardization and common business processes is a strength of the product. But if you are a diversified company that has decentralized operations, that values flexibility and nimbleness, that standardization can actually work against you and create a lack of flexibility that makes it difficult to change the software to keep up with your business needs. Now, this is especially true when you compare S/4HANA to some of the other products out there. I mentioned two of the other leaders in the marketplace, Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Oracle ERP Cloud. Those are two examples of products that are generally more flexible than S/4HANA. They may not be able to drive the standardization of S/4HANA, but they can drive flexibility better than S/4HANA in general. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that you're gaining in the area of standardization, common business processes, but you may be losing on the side of flexibility. So it's a matter of what's most important to you as an organization. Another challenge with S/4HANA is its complexity. Because it's so robust, because it's so big, it's so diverse, it does so many different things, you change one little piece over here, it's going to affect all these other pieces over here. And that simplified example of how one change upstream can affect other changes that can be very complex is a good reminder of just recognizing that the software is a big machine that's hard to build and hard to configure compared to other systems out there in the marketplace. So the complexity is something to be aware of, and you want to make sure that you have the internal competencies to be able to manage that complexity. And this is especially true since SAP has acquired other third-party systems now and brought it into the fold of S/4HANA. Things like Qualtrics, SuccessFactors on the human capital management side of things, Concur on time and expense reporting, Ariba on the procurement side. Those are just a few examples of some of the acquisitions that SAP has made recently to try and shore up some of the gaps in the core S/4HANA capabilities. And they've almost created this best-of-breed model now with these other third-party solutions that now need to integrate back to S/4HANA. So that adds a layer of complexity that could also be difficult for some organizations to manage. Another factor to consider here is cost and risk. Generally, S/4HANA implementations cost more than other implementations. Generally, they're higher risk. Now, it's important to recognize, though, that part of that is solution-based. Part of the cost and risk is because of the solution itself being complex, being big, being difficult to deploy in some cases. But it's also a function of the businesses themselves that are trying to deploy S/4HANA. Generally, S/4HANA customers are bigger, they're more complex, and they're more inherently going to be investing heavily in whatever ERP system they invest in because they're so big and complex. So part of it's related to S/4HANA itself, but part of it's also related to the typical customer profile that's trying to implement S/4HANA. But regardless, that's something worth noting, that in general, the cost and risk of S4HANA tends to be higher than other systems out there in the marketplace. Another factor to consider is the maturity of their cloud solution and of the S4HANA solution in general. Now, one thing that's good about S4HANA is that you can deploy it on-premise, you can deploy it in the cloud, and you can also deploy multi-tenant SaaS, which means multiple subscribers to the same instance, for lack of a better word, of the software. But the thing to keep in mind is that not all the capabilities from ECC and R3 have been brought over to S4HANA on either the on-premise or the cloud solution. So it's important to recognize that just because you've seen a certain function or you know that ECC could handle a certain function very well, doesn't mean that S4HANA does that well yet. In fact, we have a lot of clients that have deployed the software and found some fairly significant gaps in areas like manufacturing, product lifecycle management, advanced planning, and some other areas. So even though S4HANA and SAP as a company is investing heavily in R&D, I have no doubt they'll eventually get there. There's still some capabilities that are missing from S4HANA as they make the transition to fully commit to S4HANA. So I hope this has provided a balanced view of some of the strengths and weaknesses of S4HANA. I encourage you to, anytime you're evaluating S4HANA or any other product or comparing them side by side or against other systems, encourage you to get an objective view of what those strengths and weaknesses are, really define what your needs are, what your priorities are, and evaluate S4HANA and other options against those requirements. It's easy to get caught up in the bells and whistles and the new technologies, but at the end of the day, we need to look at what are your business processes and how does the technology best support that or not.
We are here playing you a clip of our analysis of Infor versus SAP. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 126. We're here playing you a clip of our recent video about how Infor and SAP compare to one another. Let's jump back into the clip.
So let's summarize some key considerations when looking at SAP S/4HANA. We have a very unique situation in the marketplace as we are brought in a lot of times to triage an SAP S/4HANA implementation in large global organizations. Because SAP has such a high failure rate, it often isn't really brought to fruition within an organization, may even be a technical debt or a stalled implementation. So one of the key considerations with SAP S/4HANA is the overall complexity of the product. This is one of the most robust products on the marketplace, so you'll want to ensure that you truly understand the needs and requirements and future state vision of your business operating model. SAP S/4HANA is the best fit for a very large, often multinational organization that needs a lot of different requirements because SAP can handle that type of horsepower. But with any large technology change within a business organization comes risks. The risks are higher with SAP S/4HANA because of just the complexity of the overall software. This is where project governance really comes into play a key component, and often Third Stage or another independent advisory service is brought in to ensure the quality of the project, that it stays on track, on time, and on budget. Unlike Infor Cloud Suite, SAP S/4HANA is a very rigid system. Now, this isn't necessarily a drawback or a negative, it's just something to be aware of when you're looking at a good match for your business and your company culture. Companies that really value this standardization or need that standardization across a large global organization would really benefit from a system like SAP that can set those standards within their operating model. Another key consideration with SAP S/4HANA is that total cost of ownership. As we always say here at Third Stage, especially when moving to a SaaS or cloud-based model, you need to truly understand within the contracting phase your total cost of ownership. Licensing, subscription fees, overall increases, and understanding the resources needed to go through this level of a large technology implementation. Many times, because of the complexity with SAP S/4HANA, we see companies invest in the contracting phase and have a certain number of modules. However, they didn't understand that they might need additional modules or support outside of what their core system comes with. That's just an example of how costs can get out of hand really quickly. To mitigate the risk of having your budget completely blown up, you'll want to ensure that you really have a solid phase zero planning. This is before you even touch the software. It's all an internal workshops to make sure that your company and business is ready to undergo this significant change. Something else to be aware of about an SAP S/4HANA implementation is because of its rigid nature, you are going to need a very sophisticated and experienced project management team. This is often where Third Stage is brought in to go through those PMO aspects in our mission control initiative. We support businesses by making sure that we bring our experience and overall excellent program management skills as a resource so they can still do their day job while implementing a large system like SAP S/4HANA. It's also about managing that system integrator, the software vendor, to ensure that the business needs are the true objective of the implementation, not the other agendas that vendors might have. The last consideration I'll talk about when looking at SAP S/4HANA is the need for change management. Like we talked about the need for change management in a very flexible system like Infor Cloud Suite, this is the exact opposite of that. Because SAP S/4HANA is often the best fit for those large, complex global organizations, the rigidity and standardization requires a level of change management. When we come in to fix an SAP S/4HANA implementation, we start with assessing the readiness of the organization. Oftentimes, that data showcases pockets of resistance that the executive or project leadership team didn't even know existed. That is a cancer to an implementation, is truly the resistance of change that you're unaware of. And that happens on many levels with a system as complex as SAP S/4HANA. If you want to learn more about SAP S/4HANA, right here is our guide to an SAP S/4HANA successful technology implementation. I hope this video helps compare these two systems that have great positive benefits, but also some important considerations when going through a software evaluation.
Okay, good stuff. Well, Kyler, that is our video about Infor versus SAP, our little comparison video. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways or questions from that video?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that obviously was a lot of information when it came to both reviews. And just a reminder that those are completely independent and technology agnostic and are built on our experience, not at all sponsored or promoted in any sort of way. So that's what makes them so valuable to our audience, is they truly are 100% authentic and independent. So, the piece of that, though, that we always go back to is it depends. It depends really what's best for your organization. And I want to kind of ask you, as kind of a wrap-up question to that conversation, why is that it depends so important when it comes to software selection?
Well, because no one answer is the right answer for every organization out there. Every organization has a different culture, has a different operating model, has different people, different leadership, different risk tolerances, all that stuff. So, you kind of have to look at where you are today, where you're headed in the future. And that is usually what will most inform what system or systems are going to be the best fit for you. So that's really the origins of the it depends obsession that I have. And I know you've given me a hard time on this podcast more than once about saying it depends. And that's the reason why, is because you can't have a one size fits all or universal answer to everything. you have to really understand and unpack what it is the organization is trying to become.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give 2 resources here on both sides of the video. You can scan the QR codes for our phase 0 planning, because really what Eric's saying is you have to be able to know and assess the current state of your needs in order for any of these evaluations to be actually valuable to the organization, your overall evaluation process. And then also I'm going to add, and it's in the link to our software selection buyer's guide, that is a comprehensive playbook to how do you go about evaluating, selecting, and purchasing software. So I'd love to hear your feedback on those 2 pieces in the comments. They are relatively new resources, so we take our audience feedback very seriously. But thank you, Eric, for those reviews. I know it's helpful to a lot of different considerations. Also say that on Eric's channel and our YouTube channel, there are countless software selection reviews. So if you go into the search bar and search any software that you're looking for, we not only have comparison videos, but comprehensive independent reviews of those as well. So I highly encourage you to check those out. But thank you, Eric, for all of that great insight. And we appreciate you letting us learn from you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, we appreciate learning from you and from the audience too. So thank you to the audience for all the great participation. That's what I love about this podcast and just engaging with the digital transformation community in general is I learn so much from the audience. I'm just the one, you and I are just the ones here facilitating the conversation. So I really appreciate everyone who's involved in creating that content with us. So great episode here today. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Every Wednesday, new episodes drop. You can watch us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or you can subscribe to us on audio podcast platforms, including Apple, Amazon, Google, and other sources of podcasts. So wherever you listen to podcasts, whatever your favorite platform is, just search for Transformation Ground Control, and you'll probably find us there. So great show, and look forward to seeing you next week. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Transformation Ground Control. Take care. Infor versus SAP. No, it's not going to work. Let me try that again. That's too long anyway. And we're here with Judith. Let me try that again. Go. O'Callaghan. It's a hard name for me to say.
It is. Yeah, it's a hard name for anyone to say.
Sort of butchered it, but we're going to let that one roll.
Okay.
Hello, welcome back to Okay.